All right, well, it's 6:32 by my watch and by the tail it's swinging behind Toby on the wall.
Toby, where'd you get that?
Gonna hide it.
Where did you
Yeah,
get
don't
that?
hide it.
Oh, better.
You're gonna have to move your head over.
Yeah, I would cover it easily. I think it was my 18-year-old son got it at the Purple Cow for my wife for Christmas.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Toby, my mother had one of those in like 1957. So
My third grade teacher, Mrs. Snipe, had one of those with the eyes that go back and forth.
Well, that's, yeah, I was just gonna say we have one with the eyes in the kids' bathroom. Yeah. So,
Nice that we're commenting on the poor man, his wife's gift now.
what? I was admiring it. It's helping us. It's
go, I have-
reminding me to keep track of time.
my mother had excellent taste. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
All right. So why don't we, Ben, whenever you're.
Oh, we're good to go.
All right. Sandy, you're muted. I don't know if you're speaking. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Great. No, it's okay.
You're speaking
All right, so-
of us.
Yeah. Better company.
Hmm.
Why don't we get started? Call the meeting to order. And we'll go right into Mr. Bradner, his OPM report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ben, I'll share my screen.
Good to go.
Awesome. Great. This is the report that went out. It either went out yesterday afternoon or this morning from Sharon. The usual update format that we have. Building officials, again, recurring meetings every month. We've been getting into more and more of a discussion with them on site phasing. And we'll be continuing with that, phasing egress access, both during construction and then as we kind of translate into the various phases. So we have our monthly meeting is on Wednesday morning, where we will be continuing that discussion with all those folks. Commissioning, again, this pattern is pretty familiar, I think, for most folks. Envelope ongoing, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection ongoing. The team fully engaged on property, working with all the trades, as well as the CM, the OPM, and the AE team. Per our last meeting, we are starting to have not only the overall project milestones, but also where we are on status for FF&E and technology. If everybody recalls, we kind of worked through the end of the fall and into the first month of 2021, wrapping up not only the entire kind of plan set for all of the furniture, and then Ben is doing a parallel process with the technology. Those packages are complete, and the RFPs are just about complete, with a goal of those going out by the middle of this month. Those will go through Craig and his team, but it'd be able to be advertised across, both publicly. I think Craig is planning on doing both Projo advertising out through the Newport website, and then in the other venues that the city has, either through their eBid or other avenues. With a goal that we will start to see those bids come back in at the end of March into April, with award in April, and then ultimately everything arriving on site in July for that start of installation right around the second week of July all the way through August. Overall construction, we're about 55.4% complete based on the work in place out there. And we'll talk a little bit how that relates to where we are requisition wise in a few minutes. Window glazing, Joel, you might have been out there today. I think, we are, I want to say we're 98% done with glazing. The only real major window work that's going to continue to go on is on that north stair tower. But if you look across the building now, all the major pieces are in. You might have a little bit of stragglers here and there, but really that north stair tower is the last item where they're putting in the major pieces of that storefront along that facade. Finishes have been ramping up and continue in earnest. Millwork and casework, we'll see some photos of that in a moment. Rooftop unit is currently pegged for March. Again, this is tied to our permanent power switchover. District kitchen walk-in coolers are, and some of that equipment is starting to ramp up with those March dates. And then auditorium seat installation is pegged for later this spring, May of 21. So our traditional update on where we are with the owner's contingency, the contractor's contingency, and the owner allowances. These numbers, last month, we were 81.9% on the owner's contingency. This month, we're at 80.2, so only a slight movement with those items, and most of those are in the pending column as we have not had any change orders since last month. Construction contingency went down about 11%, and that is, not unexpected given the amount of work that we're putting in place, that items are coming against that owner's contingency line item. Owner's allowances have stayed relatively static. We saw actually some money going back into some of the allowances, so that number has stayed relatively stable. And no additional drawdown on the COVID, the overall COVID allowance since that initial one that we saw last year towards the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. So our usual update, again, I'm going to breeze through this piece, but get us to the pictures. 22 subcontractors on site during the month of January on a pretty consistent basis. Again, working across really all trades. Exterior work has slowed down a little bit with the weather. So Di Gregorio, while they're continuing to do work on property, the massive mobilization on the site side has definitely slowed, and will be in a little bit of a slower mode as we work through probably the rest of February. As you can see here, this is the work that we talked about with the major glazing. It's really the last piece that's going to go in on this north tower. You can see the south tower, all those pieces are complete and in. Today we were walking around, you actually couldn't even walk in this stairwell today because they have it pretty much completely closed down as the glazing team is fully mobilized in there. Just general status, we're seeing, again, tremendous rapid progress happening throughout the building. Everything from the halftime building really starting to look much more like its future self, with the exterior finishes going on, the roof in place, interior in the major open areas between 3 and 4, the Townie Pride Cafe. What we're seeing in these typical classrooms, Eric and I were in one room this morning, I think it was on 3, Eric, where not only do we have casework that's going into place right now, but we also have actually whiteboards up on some of the walls. So the one class that we were in was really starting to kind of take shape, less flooring and kind of putting in the ceiling tiles and the final acoustic ceiling that's going to go up top. And we're going to start to see that kind of rapid progression through the 3rd and 4th floor, classrooms working from that south to north across the entire footprint.
Sam?
Yes, sir.
You just go back a little. That painting, you can assure us that is only primer?
I can't assure you that is only primer, Gene, but I can assure you that we are getting to the correct color. So these walls, Eric could confirm whether this is a completed painted wall or if it's just a prime painted wall. I'm not sure.
So right now we don't have any walls that have primer and 2 coats of paint. The red wall you see in front of you is primer and 1 coat of finish paint.
Because as you're aware, we still have further discussions on that red.
Correct. Yep.
That's correct.
And we will get all the walls to the correct color. So some of those were already done before we went through that coordination step that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. Just a few of the other more significant spaces, and I think it's really interesting. We were standing in the middle of the gymnasium this morning, excuse me again. A lot of this stuff is no longer in there, or at least not on one side. Same thing with the student commons. You're starting to see this space really start to open up, with the lower windows have been, whatever was boarding those up has been taken away. So you really start to appreciate the volume of, I think, the student common space, especially, you know, the gymnasium has kind of had that shape for a while, but with these windows being opened up in the lower level and starting to see some of the equipment and materials cleared out, it's really, you know, this space is really starting to come alive. Bathrooms actually starting to come online with all of the finishes, less the fixtures. So we're starting to see all the tile work being wrapped up, you know, obviously progressively through the building. And then finally, the collaboration spaces, which we all spent a lot of time talking about throughout the process. We are starting to see the interior glazing that you can see on both sides here, as well as here, starting to go up throughout the space. The wand doors, which are allow the access into those space, will be a much later item. We want to keep those not erected as long as possible, really just to kind of preserve the integrity of those doors and you know, prevent any kind of damage or anything else like that that's going to happen there. Project budget, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have any change orders since our last update to the committee at the beginning of January. We are on the construction side of things, we are almost squarely in the middle of requisition to date versus total contract value. So we're right at that 50% mark. If you recall, at the beginning of the discussion, we talked about work in place is at about 55%. And again, that gap is that retainage that's held back that ensures that, you know, that the contract work is on pace, but always a step, you know, a half step behind from a payment standpoint. And that works for, you know, throughout all the trades. In general, we're also really at this halfway point of money spent. So $94.5 million have been expended to date, less retainage, which leaves about just under $95 million left of funds to spend. So it's, you know, it's just so happens that this and the construction numbers are squarely at that 50% mark. And then finally, our contingency tracking log. Again, no updates this month, so we're holding on that $4.8 million current balance in the construction contingency line item. So that is the report. Happy to answer any questions, discussion, whatever works for the group or for the chairs.
Sam, I've got you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I don't know if I was coming through choppy. First one is the FF&E schedule. How much float, if any, is in that schedule?
So, you know, I think there's probably a little bit of time for this kind of procurement step, Nate. But it's, and we timed it to what AI3's experience has been in the last, you know, 6 to 12 months with the procurement side of things. So kind of what they're seeing, both, you know, trying to take into account what they've seen from a COVID trending standpoint, and then what they're typically seeing from a manufacturing and delivery standpoint to get this stuff to the loading dock at the, you know, at the building. So it's, you know, I would say there's a little bit of movement in there, but probably not a lot.
All right. Yeah, I just didn't want to hear none. My other question is just looking at the rough numbers, which is always dangerous on the contingency spend. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned with regard to the overall amount that's left. You know, just doing some rough math and backing out the $1 million for the demolition contingency. You know, if we go back to July, you know, we're basically spending about $238K a month. You know, projecting that forward, again, a dangerous practice, but, you know, that takes us 16 months forward into the project before contingency is exhausted. And I certainly know why we have contingency there. Again, I just want us to keep an eye on that and make sure that, you know, we're not hedging our bets too much. So just again, a continual reminder for me to keep a close eye on that contingency amount.
Yep, that's a great point. And just to clarify on the, the million is on top of the, that was a carved out number for that demo and abatement, that contingency of line item specifically.
Right. My numbers were back in the million out first because I know we're setting that specifically aside and we haven't even touched that yet.
Correct.
So.
Yep.
Any other-
The thing
Any
to
other
consider, the thing to consider too, Nate, is that if we are spending contingency over the later portions of these months, as you're talking about, that contingency is going to be related to demolition, is probably going to come out of the demolition contingency number. So there's a point we're doing contingency, we're going to be doing work that if there was money spent against contingency, it wouldn't come, it would, the million would be factored in. Because you get what I'm saying? I'm not sure if I'm clear about this.
No, I do. I think my overall point, Steve, is I have absolutely no feel on this project for what's too much and what's not enough, right? So I'm only looking at the pulse.
Right. So I wouldn't like make any plans for this money till we get much further on. Is I think might be kind of what you're getting at, right? So that at some point, if there's extra contingency, that's great, but I wouldn't start, looking ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't have a wish list or anything, and I don't think anyone does. But certainly, I don't want to leave a whole bunch on the table when we're done, because we're not going to get another shot at this for a very long time.
Agreed. But there is a point though, once we open the new school, that most of the work is going to be involving demolition for a significant amount of time. So at that point, we'll be tapping the demolition contingency and not even tapping, it's one contingency, but breaking it out like you spoke. So I think that will help us get a better understanding of, once we open the school, we'll have a much better understanding of where our contingency lies with the million plus whatever else we have. And I think at that point, we can start to think about some ways to start to utilize some of these funds like you had mentioned, Nate.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? And as Gene stated, we are straightening out the red that is in the building, but we've identified the need to address it in time. So we'll be.
Have one comment on the contingency that we need to keep in mind. There's a fine line as to when you do spend contingency. I mean, you don't want to get too far along and find out now it's going to cost double to do something on the wish list because we're a little conservative. Just something to keep in mind. And we'll look to our project manager, Sam, and Eric to caution us on that when time comes.
Agreed. All right.
Just on the, I know the paint issue has been sticky.
No pun intended.
Yeah, don't touch it with your finger.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that East Providence is not red, it's crimson. And I'm sure the paint shop has that in under control if that's the chips they're looking at, but it's not East Providence red, really, it's East Providence crimson. Hence the name of the yearbook. So it's not really just a red, it is a crimson. And don't ask me what the difference is between crimson and red. I think Nate's wife would be better, a better judge of what that would be.
It's the aura.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been told, right, Gene?
Literally.
It's the aura base.
With the capital A.
Yes. Still have a cord on my counter here if anybody needs it.
One question for Sam, when the rooftop units start up, is that when the warranties begin? Is that when the warranty time kicks in, or is it at the actual commissioning time? Or when does the warranty on this equipment, when does that period begin?
So Eric may recall, Eric, did we add in the time between startup and substantial completion? I can't remember.
Yes, we've asked the Gilbane to carry the period between startup to substantial completion. So all your equipment and all your warranties for everything starts on the date of substantial completion.
So Eric, everything's gonna be refiltered and all the filters are gonna be pulled.
Yes, we need to do a building flush, Steve. So that's going to
Yep.
be that, you know,
Burn it
that
in.
45 days leading up to the first day of school. So that'll be when all those filters get changed out after the building flush.
And we have a commissioning agent on this as well?
Yes, sir. Stephen Turner Inc.
Oh, that's right. My bad. I forgot.
So can I ask a question?
Please.
When, I'm gonna ask a question, not, sorry.
You asked, so I figured I'd answer.
I knew you were gonna answer me. Here's my little bit of concern. When would I be able, first of all, when do you have the ribbon cutting ordinarily? Is it close to the time that the building is opened? That's one question. Number two, when can I get faculty into that building? Number two. Number three, when can I have students come into that building prior to the opening? Because you just can't have kids show up the first day into this new building and have never been in it before. There has to be some type of an orientation into the building. So those are my concerns. I know it's only February, but we could just start thinking about that for me so that I can start putting some plans in place soon.
So Kathy, I mean, I think, just working in order, I think the ribbon cutting is really up to the ownership team, right? Our typically you'll see it when the school truly opens. But there's no reason why it couldn't be a few weeks later once you kind of shake things out, or do you want to do an event ahead of that? I think what we all know is that from July 1 to August 31 is going to be profoundly hectic.
Right.
And what we want to try to do is find that balance of all the furniture coming in, all the equipment coming in, your facilities team ramping up or beyond ramping up, but really kind of being in the building every day. Then figuring out how we layer in faculty, and then ultimately how we layer in students. So I think it would be good to kind of build that plan together with you and your team to figure out let's all be realistic around it on both sides, right? What you really need and what the building can provide, so that you can plan around that, those times, at least in big building blocks, and then we can really start to hone in on those. As we all know, the last 10% of the job is where all the things come to a head. And so we're going to be constantly kind of balancing the troubleshooting of the day with the turning over and opening. And it'll be extremely frenetic, but I think if we build a plan together, then at least that becomes our baseline that we can work towards.
Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I have very little experience with this, but if I compare it to the project that I'm working on now, before there was the occupancy permit was given to the customer, there was faculty tours, obviously very organized. In early stages, it was still my hard hat required because of whatever the status of the project, but it was prior to the owner taking occupancy, but it was so that the faculty would have some familiarity, get a leg up, and kind of phase it in. So would I be off base by kind of anticipating that we would have some opportunity, because I do anticipate, right, we're going to be in a very tight window. You know, maybe we're not, and we're pleasantly surprised, but I'm thinking that we are, like, you know, could be as tight as, you know, having the ribbon cutting and the open house to students in the same day prior to the
And the
first day of
close of
school.
Q1.
Yeah, yeah. So, but is that something that would be done, could be done?
Yeah, definitely, you know, pre-certificate of occupancy, obviously we have to be very cognizant of kind of the rules and regulations before CO and after CO. And before CO, certainly we can coordinate those type of tours, that kind of, you know, sharing the space, all of Kathy's team and the principal's team kind of understanding what's going on in the space. Again, but until you get to that CO, obviously there's things that you can and cannot do in the building, right? Tours, great. Having somebody sitting at a desk working on a computer, not great.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and we'll be very clear, and Gilbane will be very clear with kind of what those rules are, but also understanding how do we create flexibility? How do we create exposure for the faculty, for the ops team, so that they are not just walking in on August 31st and trying to figure out where the bathroom is versus a classroom versus, you know, the elevator. So.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's where, you know, we were doing, you know, equipment training and so forth, you know, on those, in those rotations for our piece. And they were seeing other, you know, obviously other vendors would have been doing the same, but it was really so that they would understand where things were, what the, you know, basically the layout and the operation of it. But it was very organized, very structured, and you know, the general contractor was in complete control of the process. So
Sam, remind
Okay.
me what the date of the turnover is right now. Did you say August?
June 30th.
Stop it. I wish.
Yeah, no.
Eric, what's the date? Is it August 31?
Projected TCO is the 23rd. Beneficial occupancy is the 30th.
Oh. Well, scratch that school calendar. Okay.
Well, and I think Kathy, to your point too, is to do some planning with you on your start of year.
Yeah.
It is really going to be important so that, again, you can manage expectations,
Right.
and we can manage expectations as well.
Kathy, if I could suggest something about your ribbon cutting. From a public relations standpoint, I'm not talking now about CO, TCO dates, but from a public relations standpoint, you might want to think about how you convey the wow factor. What you don't want is to have people walk in and say, oh, that's unfinished, or this needs to be fixed, or that's just being touched up. And so even if it happens to be September 4th or whatever it may be, I'm not sure the date, for the school district, that wow factor is what you want people to remember. And if it takes a couple more days to get to that point that everything is tied up, it looks so much better for you if you do it that way.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
That's a great
I
point,
agree.
Bob. We've all seen ribbon cuttings where things weren't quite ready.
And they've done that many times, doesn't work.
Anything else? Yeah, so well, that's definitely going to be a working, you know, a work in progress as the dates kind of fluctuate and, you know, are fuzzy. And you know, to Nate and Steve's point earlier, I would say that, you know, on the weekly meetings, which you know, I think Eric and Sam have been trying to do, is to kind of keep some of those alternates kind of teed up and ready for discussion, you know, but not committing to anything before, you know, too soon. But again, as Gene said, not, you know, we also recognize that if there's anything that we're going to do to maximize anything that's available, we want to do it as cost effective as possible. So yeah, I think all great points. And I think things are moving forward with those in mind. So,
We pay Sam the big bucks.
yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. You know what, Sam? Listen, you keep going on that track, we might get you and Eric one of those cats with the swinging tail. Because I heard that's a hot item. So
We're gonna aim. We have to aim high, Joel. So
You are so jealous, and if you get lucky, it comes with the cat.
I see him missing off Toby's wall, then I'll be worried.
All right.
So Nick, you and I have to talk. Calendar. Okay.
Yeah, well, and on, I mean, that's a whole other thing, right? But Kathy, I think from a district standpoint, maybe not so much, but maybe we can find some flex if need be.
We can.
Flexibilities with the high school.
We can pull the rest of the district in and use our calendar, and we may have to be flexible with high school.
Right.
Yeah.
But so hopefully not.
We'll do it. Yep, hopefully not.
All right. So if there's no other discussion on the OPM report or anything on the project, we will go, next item would be consider and vote to approve the invoices, which I will pass it off to the money man, Craig.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
So the invoices for the month of January 2021, AI3 basic services, $122,474.84. AI3 extra services, $1,966.80. Gilbane Building Company, $4,790,495.92. Peregrine Group LLC, $59,000. Stephen Turner Inc., $6,104.75. And Filch Engineering for $3,705 for a grand total of $4,983,747.31.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Wagon, and I'm sorry, I missed the second. I heard
It was me.
Doesn't matter. One of us.
So we'll give it to Mr. Vinatero. For a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Mr. Oakland, are we so recuse on the Gilbane, or are we good on that one for the record?
I just vote present on all Gilbane invoices.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that Sharon remembered that for the record.
Yeah, the meeting minutes reflect that.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up.
I know that you're an upstanding man, and want to make sure that.
Don't tell everyone.
Yeah, I know. It ruined the reputation. Speaking of minutes, so we have a consider and vote to approve the minutes for January 11th, 2021. Any discussion or questions?
So moved.
So we have a
Second.
motion to approve, second by Mr. Oakland. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That passes. And our next meeting date would be
March.
March, right? Another 8th. So March 8th.
Mhm.
Are there any conflicts, concerns, any need to adjust that? Okay. And that would be it, unless there's any final discussion before we adjourn. Again, I would like to thank everyone here. It's a proud part of the conversation when I speak with Eric and Sam, and they continually speak of the building committee that we have and the uniqueness to the level of involvement and expertise, academically, obviously from an industry standpoint, finances, just process. We're just very fortunate. So I'll probably say it every meeting, but I mean it every time. So I really appreciate everybody's work on this. Nothing else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
So moved by Mr. Wagon and a second by Mr. Amoroso. I saw the finger go up. It's like an auction.
I'll take two.
Right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Good night, everyone.
Now,
Thanks, folks.